Welcome to this special episode of Decoding Gender Insights from Thought Leaders. Population First is observing the 16 days of activism against gender based violence, a global campaign from November 25th to December 10th, with a 16-part podcast series that delves into the intersection of gender and critical social issues. Since inception in 2005, Population First has focused on challenging the gendered attitudes that devalue girls and women, fuel discrimination, and perpetuate gender-based violence. Gender significantly influences political participation in India, where cultural norms and systemic barriers have long limited women's involvement. Despite voting rights since 1947, women's representation in parliament and state legislatures remains abysmally low. The 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments, reserving 33% of seats for women in Panchayati Raj institutions, have boosted grassroots participation. However, societal discrimination, financial constraints, and safety issues still impede progress in higher political roles. Bridging this gap requires education, leadership training, and passing the Women's Reservation Bill. This will ensure 33% representation in legislatures, paving the way for inclusive and equitable governance. Joining us are two very special guests who can speak on the subject with authority. Angelica Aribam, who works on issues of race, gender, and the democratization of politics, is the founder of Fem First and a respected political activist who has authored a book on women political leaders. Haima Deshpande, who joins her, has been a senior journalist with organizations like the Indian Express and Outlook, where she tracked mainstream politics for many decades. Over to both of you.
Let me first thank Population First for holding, such an important, bringing such an important topic to the forefront. Because everybody talks about, politics, and everybody talks about women being there. But then women just seem to be just a small statistic. And talking about this, this issue and bringing it out is very, very, very required today, because everybody should understand what exactly, how exactly are the women being how exactly is their participation welcome into this whole realm of politics? Over to you, Angelica.
I completely echo your thoughts, Haima, there. And thank you so much, Population First, for having this platforming this conversation. When we talk about gender-based violence, generally it's not seen from the lens of politics. And a lot of women and girls are deterred from joining politics because they see politics as either dirty, or the family members are scared that, it's a field where there is a lot of hooliganism, gundagardi, etc. and etc. So they are deterred from joining politics, which also is one of the reasons why there is inadequate representation of women in politics. The unfortunate thing is the numbers, when we look at the numbers right before India's independence, till now, 75 years of the constitution now, the representation of women in politics has not increased much, and there is a lot of work that we need to do going forward to ensure that the space is safe, there are conversations being held, etc., so that we increase not just the numbers, but also we make it a safe space for women and girls to enter in the future. So yeah, I'm really glad that this conversation is happening today.
Well, as somebody, I have been in the field in rural areas, urban rural areas more so, covering elections, covering politics, covering everything. And I have got the feeling that, that this is something, these statistics will never improve. Because what is going to happen is, as we develop, as the world, development has not been kind to women. Development has not been kind to women. So as we talk, because as it progresses, the years progress, you're not going to have more women come in, because then the harassment is going to be of a different thing. Now you're talking about social media. women being trolled, women politicians being trolled is the biggest fear today, So nobody, look at Twitter, look at any of those things, You don't have a lot of women in the political space talking about issues or giving their opinions about issues or anything like that, because they are absolutely scared of that harassment that they will face online. Now, if you go into the political space, when you cover, when on the field, when you go, I've been to panchayats and all, where all women panchayats, all of that. What happens there is, you have the men running the panchayats. In fact, when I went to meet a woman in one of the panchayats in Gujarat, I remember that I had to tell the husband that, that let me speak to your wife who is the sarpanch of this village, not you. But he refused to do it. He said usko kuch pata nahi hai, मैं ही सब चलाता हूँ, उसको ऐसे ही बिठाया है. If this is the attitude, because unless you are a wife, unless you are a sister, or unless you are a daughter, you're not going, nobody is going to hear you out in the political space, because that is what it has come to be. And that is what is, that is what is seen today. So if you're looking at, say, you're looking at a Supriya Sule, would Supriya Sule have been heard if she was not Sharad Pawar's daughter? Would she have not been given that political space? Would she have got that political space if she was not Sharad Pawar's daughter? I mean, there are so many examples of this. And women who are, new to politics, women who want to make an entry without any of this baggage, either that of a father or a brother or any of their family political lineage, it is very difficult for them to come, because there are no resources available. And there will always be that consideration, elective merit. Elective merit is that one word, these two words. This is something that, that decides the career, the political career of politicians, of women politicians particularly. And if you see, there are male career politicians, but it's very difficult to find a woman career politician because of this elective merit being the sole criteria in their selection. What do you think about this, Angelica?
Well, I agree with some points that you've made, but I also have a little different point of view here. And the way I approach it is, yes, of course, let's go point by point on what you have said, right? The number one is the token representation of women in politics. And it's one of the major criticisms that the 73rd and 74th Amendment has faced over the years, is that, panchayat patis are the people who are making the decisions, etc., etc. So, but we need to understand what it's the root cause of this. Let me break it down for you. So what happens ideally is when a reservation has been brought in with, say, 33% now and 50% in some of the states, and then women are brought in to be for the tickets, and they get the tickets, they become elected because it's a reserved seat. What ideally happens is women have been for the longest period of time conditioned to believe that they are not to involve in politics. Like, even now I hear a lot of young girls, etc., who want to join politics, their families saying that, politics is not a field for women. They might have political discussions in the drawing room, in television, they watch news and they talk, but it's only the men's voices which are respected in those discussions. If the women, the daughter, example, voices a point of view, they're like, tumhe kya pata, you're a woman. That kind of a thing is, we live in a patriarchal world, and it's everywhere, be it in rural areas or be it in the cities. So when a woman who has been told that this is your domestic role, you are not supposed to take part in politics, you are supposed to take care of the family, you're supposed to cook, you're supposed to clean, etc., when they get a ticket, obviously in the beginning they don't know what the whole political system is, they don't know whom to approach to get work done, you don't know which deputy district collector you might have to go to, SDM, etc. You don't even know the roles and responsibilities that you are to undertake, right? If you want to build a road, whom do you go to? If you want to construct a well, whom do you approach? These are things that have been men have kept them, they have not allowed women into those spaces. So when a woman is elected for the very first time, she's not aware. The husband obviously take the reins, take the control of everything, or the father, in the male members of the family. But when a woman studies have also shown this, that when a woman is elected over a period of 3 times, second time they gain a little more confidence. They get to know what's going around them, and they're not so blinded by everything around them. And by the time they're elected the third time, they gain full confidence. They get to know what's happening. They take controls from the male family members. So globally, if we look at trends, reservation trends, and the way women have, evolved in the third round of elections. So it's a trend that really helps. Of course, we also need to acknowledge that why there is, we cannot just say that, okay, women are panchayat patis are all controlling, we don't need women, they are just token. We can't say like that. We need to understand that there is a root cause to it, and how we get rid of that root cause, which is why capacity training of women elected at the panchayats are absolutely important. And some governments have now started to take the initiative. Not just governments, but also there are political, NGOs, non-profit organizations, etc., who are working to build those capacity building and equip them with the skills required. That's number one point. Right. Number two is, you mentioned a little about dynastic families, right? I do agree the entry barrier is very low for people belonging to political families. The people might not even know what their capabilities are. They might not be in leaders, and they will feel just by the merit of someone's daughter or someone's wife, they become political leaders. I mean, they're just projected as leaders without having to do the grassroots work. And that's the unfortunate reality. Comparatively, people like me, for example, who have been actively involved in activism. I have been a part of the political system. And I was, with the Indian National Congress, I was All India General Secretary for the Students' Wing for 5 years or so. So for us, there is a lot more of hard work that we need to put in to just get into the entry level. It's extremely difficult. But once that entry level is crossed, then that more or less the challenges that women leaders have to go through are, I mean, the women from the political dynasties also have to go through some of those challenges that we as first generation politicians have had to go through, right? And some of these are, let me just bring it out. It's sexism from other political leaders. It will be, a complete misogyny. It will be on the lines of being completely sidelined in meetings where your voices are not heard. You're just seen again as token or ornament. I like to use the word ornamental. So there you're just seen as ornamental beings there, right? Those things do happen, and it's across the board. Of course, the dynastic women have it a little more easier. But it's not that it's not entirely a cakewalk for them either. That's the second point I wanted to make. And the third point is about basically, I have also seen how, a lot of the women from the grassroots, from the panchayats, who were completely ignorant the first time, who grew up the ranks, and who have actually reached parliament despite the fact that they're first generation, they don't have mentors, or they have just gotten there by the merit of their work. Electorally, the people in their communities love them. They became, then suddenly they became, parliamentary candidates, and they got elected at the parliament, not for one time, but second time, etc. So some of the journeys are inspiring, and it motivates others to join in. But there are also, it's not an easy road. There are a lot many challenges, but there is those glimmer of hope somewhere and the other, which when we present to young girls and women, it's of course inspiring and helps us.
See, I think this is a trend the world over, the world over. I think they are not giving their due to women leaders, or they're not giving, they're not making the process easy to have more women leaders. But if you see the world over, only in 27 countries, we have women leaders, and the rest of the countries, I think almost 107 or something like that, they've never had a woman head of state. And India is, India, we've had Mrs. Gandhi, but after that, now for women to get in, it is tough, because they, for them, it is the whole thing of proving, it is, if a man has to prove it once, they have to prove 10 times that they're much better. I remember this incident, in one of the panchayats, one of the villages that I had been to, in the women panchayat, I mean, the cervical cancer vaccine is very, the government is talking about it, HPV vaccine, they're talking about it. They're talking that they're giving free this thing to schools, to those schools and all that. And this lady, she had she had fair knowledge about it. She had understood. She had gone and asked her doctor. She had done her homework and everything she had done. But just to get that thing, passed by the panchayat to be implemented so that the school there, the girls in that village could, benefit out of it was so tough. And even today, I mean, it's really tough because nobody understands. When she talks about it, they just shout her down. So this is one of the things. So all the thing is, like they feel that even if women are there, women leaders are there, what do they have to talk about? They're given something like, even if you look at the ministries, now they are coming to get finance, or they're coming to like that, get that. But otherwise, I've seen in Maharashtra, it's, first, what are the first choice? The first choice is women and child development, or they will give some cultural department or something like that. That is the first thing that is given to them. And subsequently, then they will think, that should we give them that? Should we give them this? And I've heard discussions around this, And a woman leader's merit is never, considered. It is always that, because if she is there, what can she deliver? What can our party get out of that? What is her caste? These are the same narratives that go for male politicians also. But they don't have to face it so hard as a woman leader. And for a woman leader, women's voice is very, very important. If countries like Mexico and Rwanda can have 50-50%, 50-50 share in power sharing, then I think that countries like India has got one of the, best, what do you call, genre of women leaders. We have a lot of women leaders waiting in the wings to just come out there and to just be heard, to just be seen, and just to be given their chance. But I really don't see that happening. The more and more we develop, the more women will be kept out of this entire political process, because the more ambitions of men will increase. Today you have more men. To look at the Maharashtra political scene today. Look at when tickets had to be, we are talking about 288 seats. When, seats had to be given, when tickets had to be given to women, they were always talking about, take that one, take this one, take this one. But a woman was never considered unless she was somebody's, like I said, she came from a political family. Why? Because numbers mattered. And when numbers matter in government making, in government formation, they always think that women may never, they may not get elected, or there is never that confidence that, that she can be an important part of that number and part of government formation. So this is the thing. How do you see it? I think you've been, being approached so many times by political parties. You've worked with number of political parties. So what is your take on all of this? I think you worked with the TMC also, no?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I run a non-profit organization. We train women leaders from across political parties. That's what we do. So all political parties, through the lens of the women leaders who are in them, I get a glimpse of how they function and how gender unfriendly they are, unfortunately. And it's a truth across political parties that on the face of it, some of them might claim to be, liberal and, they might talk about women's reservation or being gender equal, etc. on the face of it. But inside, the rot is very deep, because it also comes from the point that men do not want to cede power. They don't want to give up their power. And even though even looking at data, we know the representation is low. Now we're talking about the women's reservation bill coming in maybe in the next 5 years or so after the census and everything is done. But even then, like you said, maybe the number will increase, but how much of will they have say in the decision-making process? So there is that fundamental difference there, having a representation. Right now, what we are fighting for is the basic right for representation. Once that barrier is crossed, the next step we should be fighting for is that decision-making, and it's a long battle ahead of us. But when we talk about decision making, and you cited the example of Rwanda and Mexico, and those numbers look good. When again going back to numbers, Rwanda 63% or some 61% now, and then Mexico second highest ranked, etc. But there also the picture is not as rosy, because the women parliamentarians who are elected, some in Rwanda, or the women leaders in Mexico, I have women politicians friends there as well. And the kind of stories that I get to hear from them, and also research and data indicate that there is a lot of cases of femicide of women political leaders there. There is a lot of women political leaders, just because men don't want to cede space, they are even they may get elected, but they face intra-political party violence, where people from within their political parties are sort of attacking them, taking out or killing them, to the extent of killing them. And in Rwanda, the cases, women politicians who might be talking about empowerment and equality in the parliament, they come back home and they face domestic violence from their own husbands within their own households. So women, unfortunately, it's really tragic that we might be talking about the world, how we improve the world, but we are not even safe in our own houses, right? So these are examples that we see over the world, but which means that we might get the numbers, but it's not going to be an easy walk for any of us. We have a lot of work to do. And a lot of that has to do with patriarchy, and it becomes now fundamental for us to talk to men and boys as well, and make them understand, help them unlearn the gender stereotypes, make them normalize with the idea of women's leadership. And it's not it starts from a very young age that we should start working on it. Okay, so that's how I see it in terms of, and you're absolutely right. Ministries, more often than not, women and child's ministry, tourism ministry, or a cultural ministry,
Yeah.
it's across the board. It's very normalized. And I agree with you there totally. Yeah, I'm
I'll
just
sum
going
up
to
later.
quickly sum up, because you had also, Haima, earlier mentioned about online violence, and even now online violence it's a way for them to shut the women out. You get your face continuous trolling once, twice, you might speak up. I myself have been a victim of online violence, very horrific online trolling, etc. I had to reach out to the Delhi police, file a case, etc., to that extent. So earlier, when I used to speak up, I used to write on social media a lot. Now I have also self-censored, because I know that I'm going to face the violence, online violence, and the police is not going to help me, and they didn't help me in that case either, right? So women, they might be vocal, but they are also self-censoring themselves, and this is happening again a lot of women, opinionated, strong women, like we have seen cases like Bully Bhai or the Suli deals, etc., where they're targeting women out there. So it's really tragic that the systems are not helping us. There is institutional ignorance of women's needs within political parties. There is again then the gender violence, on misogyny and sexism, targeting political rivals who are women. And then even when we go to rallies, or even on public stages, we are groped. Those kind of things. It's perpetually everywhere. I just wanted to that's the larger picture you have there. Over to you,
See,
Haima.
my whole thing here is, we are talking about reservation. This thing is, when you're talking about reservation, who is going to create the space for this reservation to be implemented? This is a fundamental question that we have to ask. When reservation has to be implemented, a space has to be created. Which male politician, who is going to step down? Who is going to create that space for women's reservation in political space to be implemented? This is all, this is something, since this is not going to be an easy task, there will be fewer women in politics in the years to come.
A couple of years ago, I wrote to all political parties. When I was also a member of the Indian National Congress, I wrote to all political parties and requested them to establish the ICC, Internal Complaints Committee. And none of the political parties responded to it. It was only one political party, Aam Aadmi Party, who reached out to me and said that yes, they have formulated a POSH committee. But the tragedy of it is none of them have even acknowledged it. They have not bothered. I have gone to political party leaders, met them in person. I'm not going to take names, and I have raised the question that political parties are also working workspaces, and it's needed. ICCs are needed. But they were like, yeah, hum sochenge. This is the quote unquote response that I received from the political leaders who are leading political parties out there. So it's and when we think back to the Me Too movement, how most of the other fields were touched except political parties. None of the women came out and spoke against the political leaders. And that's the tragedy. When in fact we know that there are, and sexual violence within political parties from male political leaders. There are cases out there that are happening, but none of them got the confidence to speak up again, because speaking to against male political leaders is they have a lot of power. They can subjugate the women, they can ruin their careers, etc. and etc. Those factors are there, and unfortunately, ICCs are not even discussed within political parties right now. Over to you, Haima.
The whole thing is, like POSH is a career killer. Having a POSH committee is a career killer, because what happens is how many women leaders will go, how many women in politics in that political party will go and file a complaint with that POSH committee? How many of them will go? It is political suicide. So women do not want it themselves. There is every political party has, these sexism, has, harassment against women, has some kind of unsaid, and very quiet sexual violence against women. All this thing happens. Everybody knows. We also know political leaders who are party to this. We also know political leaders whose names have been linked to this. But you ask a woman who is going to come forward to file a complaint. So it's in this space, it's very easy to say that we must have POSH committees, but it's extremely difficult to implement, because there is never going to be a single complaint there. And besides, which woman is going to head that POSH committee at the cost of her career? So these are very relevant things there.
Well, I'll slightly differ there, because there have been cases where women have gone out and reported, and where political leaders have been sacked from their positions. At least I've seen cases, especially with students wing of the Indian National Congress, where one national president had to be sacked because of the woman.
But what happens to the leader who filed a complaint? Where is she?
Exactly. That is one of the...
So she's gone into oblivion. Yeah. She's gone into oblivion. They take action. You file a complaint, you take action. But then
they sometimes take action. They sometimes take action.
Sometimes take action. So the person goes into oblivion. So it is a career suicide. It's a political suicide for the person who files a complaint.
Some women do have the courage to, if they feel that the harassment has been intense, they have the courage to let go of their career, but be justice be served, and the other person be penalized for what they have done. So it's always good to have those mechanisms in place. That's what I believe in, because it builds the confidence that I can go somewhere. I don't care about my career, but I want justice.
Thank you, Angelica and Haima, for this engaging and thought-provoking discussion on gender and political participation. Viewers may share their reactions, queries, and observations in the comments section below. Please watch all the episodes and initiate gender conversations with your family, friends, colleagues, and community members.